Hey there, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hello, ladies.
Hey.
Hello. Kate and I are super excited to be joined by Nicole who is a CCA student, a copywriter, and just all-around fantastic person. We were just reminiscing before we started the recording, basically, that Nicole, you and I talked years ago. When you and I first sat down and talked years ago,
pre-pandemic.
Yes, it did take me a while to get a podcast going, because I think at the time I was like, yeah, we're gonna have a podcast, it'll be great, it'll be super easy to launch. Surprise. But thank you so much for sitting down and catching up with me and letting the rest of the world know what you've been up to since you got started. So
lots happened.
A lot has happened. Yeah. So when did you and I chatted, we were saying in February of 2020, was it?
Yeah, that's when you and I talked last. I was looking back in my emails to see when I signed up for the CCA, and it was the end of 2019, October. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
2019. Yeah. So, how have things been? how's life? How are things?
Oh gosh, it's so different than it was in October 2019. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, when we first talked, I was living by house sits. So I was like, I can't remember if we talked about that at that time or not. I probably told Kate about it but yeah, I didn't have a home. I was like just driving around and doing these long house sits across the country. So I was actually in Charleston when we talked then. And of course the house sitting industry ended. So everything's so different than it was back then. Yeah. So yeah, I've been copywriting. I've been doing lots of things actually. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's something I definitely want to dig into, because I think sometimes people think, oh, if I'm going to take a course and I'm going to learn something, it has to be 100% my new direction. And that's just not really the case. And so it would be especially interested to hear what your kind of career evolution has been, and not that it's done by any means either.
Yeah. Take us through that. Cause I think you were starting to pitch. When did you start pitching?
Yeah, so I won those. It was the first Pitch-a-palooza, I think.
Yeah, I think it was the first
year.
annual.
Yeah, the first one, which was awesome. By the way, I love Pitch-a-palooza. Was like the best part. It's what really got the ball rolling. It was amazing. So thank you for that. But then because of that, it was like there was a contest. I submitted my USP, and then I won some raffle, and I got one-on-one coaching with Kate. So that was amazing. So you walked me through. I happened to the timing just lined up perfectly that I happened to have my first call with a potential client during that time. So you were able to help me put together a proposal for them and really walked me through it. So that was awesome. But yeah, that first client paid off the CCA.
That's
so
awesome.
And more. So it didn't have to be full-time by any means for the course to be worthwhile. But yeah, I'll walk you through it. So before the CCA, I actually, a little bit of a different background maybe than some of your students, but I worked in advertising and marketing. So I worked at an agency, but I was an account manager. So I worked with copywriters and with designers, but I wasn't one. And I was at this agency in New York for 3 years. And just, it really, really burnt me out. When you're an account manager, you have to be on call all the time. And I had clients in California and clients in Europe. So that meant literally all the time. I was the first one they would text when a tweet didn't go live as it was supposed to, or, things happen. And social media especially is such it feels, there's something very urgent about it. And clients feel that urgency. So anyway, so I burnt out. I ended up leaving New York, traveling. I ended up living in Colombia and a few places in South America. And then, I was just trying to piece a life together, because I had just literally blown up everything and walked away. And so when I came back, I was like, okay, I have this skill set. I have these connections, right? But I don't want to be an account manager anymore. And then it must have been advertisements that came through for CCA, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense maybe to go that way. And I had like some samples to do more copywriting, just because like occasionally I'd had to pinch hit as an account manager. So that's how I got back into copywriting. But then, so then I had a few clients, and then the pandemic hit. And the big client I had landed, which is the one Kate helped me with, they ended up like releasing all of their freelancers because they were very product focused and in stores, and they were like worried about what was going to happen. So I lost my biggest client. And then I ended up not traveling so much because I couldn't, right? So pandemic meant all of these things, not traveling. My biggest freelance client had let me go. And then, so then I was in place in Connecticut, and I ended up getting an adjunct teaching gig, which, because, you know, at the time, a lot of people didn't want to teach in person. And so it was like this, I ended up teaching at a college. I did have to go in person, even though the students didn't. So that was weird in its own way. But super then, weird. Yeah, super weird. So I was like teaching to kind of an empty classroom and a bunch of like students on Zoom who were just little blank boxes. Yeah, it was super strange, a weird time to start teaching. But I really, really loved it. And I think Kate even checked in with me around that time. It was hey, how's copywriting? Just like sent me an email. I was like, oh, I'm not doing it. I don't know if I ever will, because I love teaching so much. Yeah. But then as like another result of the pandemic, like a later result, right? The enrollments were down for colleges. So I went from having like a full course load to being like, oh, you only have one class this semester. So I was like, okay, I need more income than that. So I came back to copywriting, which was wonderful because like I had all this stuff set up. You know, I still had connections, I still had samples. I was able to start pitching. I have these connections from my old agency life. And I was able to make that ball start rolling very quickly again. So yeah, weird. I feel like I jumped all over the place there, but it was a weird trajectory. I couldn't have predicted I'd be here, and I'm grateful that I am. Everything is, so now I have like one class, and I copyright like 20, 30 hours a week. And it's a perfect balance for me. I'm actually quite happy with like the workload I have.
That's great. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that's just a perfect demonstration of how flexible it can be. It doesn't, you know, you don't have to go, yes, I'm going to be a full-time freelance copywriter and this is how it's going to go, or I'm going to be forever on staff at an agency. Yes. And it has to be this way. I think that's part of what makes it so much fun, is that you can go, yeah, well, I need some more cash. I'm going to dial up my clients, dial up my pitching, or no, I actually want to scale back because there's this other cool opportunity that I want to explore for a while. But I love your point that once you have, I mean, let's face it, at the beginning, when you're learning and you're building your website, it can be a little bit like, chaotic isn't the word, not at all.
There's a lot. There's a lot
to do. And there's like, well, I have to build this and I have to learn this. But to your point, once that's behind you and you've gotten to the point where you're pitching, you can really easily dial it down or dial it up. It's really just a matter of how much you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great knowing that. I feel like I have, like, copywriting is this kind of security net for me right now of like, yeah, I've built enough of this kind of base that I can always turn that dial up or down. And I've always been someone who has like lots of passions, lots of, like, I like doing very different things. And within copywriting, you can do that, right? Like I've learned I don't really like social media so much. And I prefer to do like more environmental ads or landing pages, right? But so within copywriting, there's that room for variety, but also I can turn down the dial if I want to pick up a class, or I want to, I also have an Etsy shop. So I like sell some art on Etsy, which is like a smaller side thing, but during the holidays that gets ramped up. More people are buying stuff from Etsy. And so my copywriting goes down a little bit. And yeah, it's really, really nice for me to be able to turn those dials. It's a part of the way I like to live.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, and I love, and I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing, but you're doing really well with your 20 to 30 hours of copywriting.
Yeah. So most of it is through the agency I used to work for. So I do have those connections like ahead of time. But like for people that don't have that, I think having a contract with an agency has been awesome for me. I get to work on big clients, like that they have their connections through. And I have the networking potential. Like there are a lot of freelancers, so I meet designers, and then those designers get other projects, and they like, oh, I know this copywriter, let me bring her in, right? So being contract with the agency has just been a really good place to build my portfolio and to start, and it's reliable. I have had the opportunity to go on full time again, and I don't know. The contract's nice. It's I know how much I'm going to make around, right? I make like in a range every month, and it's reliable. But if I go full time, I don't have those dials anymore that I was talking about that I really like. So it just becomes a different thing. But yeah, it's really great. I highly recommend it for the connections alone, right? The connections you make, other freelancers. Agency is also pretty high turnover. So like if I have an account manager I really like who leaves and goes in-house somewhere else, which did happen, right? Like she can bring me with her to her new job. And so yeah, agency is highly recommend. There are things I don't like about it. Like I don't get to be as picky with what clients I have. So I don't always love everyone. But also that like changes, right? And by always love, I mean, it's just not always like my passion client. I'm not like choosing who I pitch. And also, like I said, I've learned I don't like social media, and that's usually because it can be really fast, right? They can be like, this happened, we want to tweet about it in 2 hours. And when you're a freelancer, that's a little, it's hard. So I do it. I'm on like the agency's like Slack channel, and like I'll do it if I'm there and I have time, but sometimes I have to be like, I can't do that one. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Kate and I have both contracted too. And I think that you get throughout our careers. And I think that contracting is something that a lot of people forget about or don't really consider. And for me, it was always kind of it was a best of both worlds, because you had that flexibility. Like there's no golden handcuffs. You're not like, well, I don't want to quit because this, but you had that flexibility, but you also have that networking aspect, and you're meeting other people. And back the last time I was contracting, you would go into an office for a certain number. And it was actually kind of, and I think people can understand this a little bit more now. Well, so many of us have been working from home. It was kind of nice to go into an office and interact with real live people. And I think it's funny too, that they're like, oh, you want to come on staff? I think every time I've contracted for a company. So if you're listening and you're interested in going on full-time at a company, consider contracting, because I think every single time that I contracted for a company, they offered me a job there because they knew me, they knew the work I did. I was already fitting in. And most of the time I said, thank you, but no, because I liked that flexibility, but sometimes I did say yes. Yeah. I think contracting is a great and often overlooked opportunity.
I feel like that's part of their plan sometimes, is like, let's try this person out and see if they're a good fit.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think something that listeners can take from that too is like, pitch agencies. The turnover is so fast. They need freelancers. They need freelancers all the time, and they might not list on their job description. They might not, or their job like careers page, right, where they have all the descriptions. They might not say they need a copywriter, but they probably do. They probably have someone leaving tomorrow and they don't know yet. You know, like it's good to be on their list of people to call. The agency that I work at, like they could use a few more copywriters. So. Yeah, definitely look for agencies.
Yeah. I think sometimes people think, I know that people think, well, it's an agency, they must have access to plenty of copywriters. Why would they be interested in me?
Their copywriting's so good. Why would they need a copywriter?
Or they already have copywriters on staff. And to your point, people are coming in and out all the time. On top of the fact that agencies are landing new clients all the time. If they land a new client, they have to ramp up they have to ramp up very fast, and it can take time to get people, to find people. So if you're there and in their inbox is a solution, then hey, you've got a really good shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like they'll have a retainer client, but that client has a one-off project and they need to bring a freelancer on for that. And it's just, you never know. It's really good. Like email the creative director, send them an email, tell them that you're available.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. And to your point, email the creative director. Don't go through the website. No. Don't go through, email the person who's actually going to make the decision. Email the creative director. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I love what you said too earlier. I want to point it out again. The account manager that left and can bring you with you. I can't tell you how many times that's happened with old colleagues. There's one in mind. She's worked at 3 different companies since I met her, and I've freelanced with her at each one. And some of them I've stayed on even after she left because they're like, oh, we have this freelancer now. And that happened. The more people you know, the more opportunities there are for those people out in the world to refer you.
Yeah. Yeah. I work with a freelance designer now. So I'm on the same client, right? And we just messaged each other separately the other day, which I recommend. Like, I used to be afraid to do this, to like network, to reach out, but I just sent him a message. I was like, hey, love working with you. Do you mind if I like recommend you? If I ever get a client that I also need a designer, do you mind if I bring you with me? And of course he's like, no, of course I don't mind that. Like, yeah, I love working with you too. Let me do the same. I'm like, great. So like reach out one-on-one. I love being on Slack for the reason you were talking about before, Nicki, about how it's nice to go into an office when you're contracting. Like, I like being on their Slack, right? And just that's the virtual office, and you can just reach out to anyone and say, hey, want to get a virtual coffee and talk about things? Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people still have this idea of networking as like going to an event and handing out your business card and saying, hi, what do you do? And, like a bad middle school dance or something like that. Like, I hope people talk to me. But you're right. That's not at all. It's not what it is anymore. It's just meeting people through work, meeting people through whatever. And I loved your tactic of not like, you made it about him. You didn't make it about you. You made it, hey, can we keep connecting? And can I recommend you? And I mean, and like, yeah, of course he was like, yes, please do this. Oh, and by the way, I'll do the same. Yes. I think that's such a great tactic, and something that we, and it doesn't just have to be designers either, right? It could be, if you work with a great, because account managers freelance as well, developers freelance. I mean, people freelance, project managers, people in any industry, in any career, freelance. So, and you never know where you'll find yourself in a company, and they're like, oh, sorry, things are crazy. We just lost our project manager. And it just makes you a better partner to be able to say, oh my gosh, I actually know a really fantastic freelance project manager. Let me get their info for you. And so you can use that same networking tactic of like, hey, I just wanted to connect. And if I see anything come through, are you available? Could I pass your name along? Like, oh, that's so good. I love that.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love it too. And I love helping it feels good to help when you can, but then also, of course, there's the help me also. If you get a cool client, bring me in.
Right. Like, well, yes, exactly. If you get a client, then if you have referred people, or even just that you suggest referring, you're going to be the first person that they mention. You're going to be top of mind. You put out goodwill into the world. I feel like it comes back to you. That's fantastic. Yeah. So Etsy shop, which I'm sure we're recording this in November, so I'm sure you're really gearing up and shipping stuff like crazy. Etsy shop, course that you're teaching, copywriting, what other kinds of things? Like, your career can be flexible, right? What other kinds of stuff do you want to add to the mix? Where do you want to go? What do you want to be doing?
Ooh. Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I feel like really good with my mix. I feel like it took me a while. I used to, I don't know if you've heard of like VIP Kid or OutSchool. Have you heard of these like online teaching platforms? Okay. Well, I used to like teach online through these platforms, which was okay, but it doesn't pay super well. Like it's fine. It's like through a company, but that's how I was supporting myself. And I felt like I was like just working all the time. Like, so copywriting made it so I did not have to do that anymore, which is wonderful. But so I feel like it took me a while to build this kind of patchwork life that I have right now. And I feel pretty good about it. The one thing that I am trying to do is, so because I work with an agency mostly, right? Like that's how I get most of my copywriting work. I do get a little complacent with my pitching and I don't want to have all my eggs in one basket. I want to be able to have other things, like in case, like I am contract, it's a month to month, like every month I send them a new scope of work, and every month, so they could always decide not to have add a month if they hire someone full time, or there could be lots of reasons. So I do need to ramp up my pitching, and also I need to not do so much social media, because one thing I found
I feel that
I mean it's fine, I like it, but it's no, why did I say I like it? I don't like it, but it's fine. It's fine though. It's just different, right? It's not like there is strategy, but it's a little less like sometimes you don't lead with the benefit. It's more important to have like the voice, or sometimes, right? Like, and I like the strategy behind it. So I like writing social media ads, right? I like writing Facebook ads. That's a little different. But like what happened early on, right? So now it's going back to 2019, early 2020, when I first started pitching, is I was getting clients that were like, they kind of expected me to be a social media manager, which meant like I pitched them as a copywriter. And then because I was such a young copywriter, I was like, yeah, sure, I do that. But then it's anything. Like, yeah, exactly. And so then I find myself like, the client's like, oh, can you respond to this person's comment on Instagram? And I'm like, oh, like that's really not what I want to do. Yeah. So it was good to learn that, and to learn the difference between like when they're looking for a social media, they might say they're looking for a copywriter, but really what they want is like social media manager, which is to be honest, like usually less hourly, right? Like they're not going to pay you as much as you want. And also it's, can you check in 3 to 5 times a day
it's
on our
constant,
comments,
right? I mean, it's just,
yeah. So I found myself taking those kinds of jobs. So it's cool to like be at the point where I know what kind of jobs I want and what kind I don't. And I can be like, no, I don't do that actually. That's different.
Yeah. And there's so many people out there who are looking for actual copywriters that you don't take. And you were a newer copywriter, and I definitely understand that. Like, I'll take whatever is offered to me. But even when you were a newer copywriter, there are plenty of other people who are looking for, and that's the thing, is that clients are not as savvy as we are about the differences. And like you were saying, they were advertising for a copywriter, but they really wanted was a social media manager. Or sometimes too, you'll see people who are advertising for a copywriter because they've heard that word. But what they really want is like a blog post writer,
Yes.
And that's the two there can be some overlap, but they're two different things. And it's that same problem, right? Content versus copy. Content, it can be fun. It's not my jam, but it can be a lot of fun, but there's so much less strategy, so it's paid so much less. And I agree. I think the strategy and the creativity that's inherent in copywriting is just so much more interesting, keeps your attention better. And I find that I have a different kind of pride when I finish a copy project and I do it well, versus a content, which is a blog that I don't mean to do this, even though I literally did just fling my hand away. It's still valuable work, but for me, it's not something I enjoy. But speaking of pride in work that we've done, you have your copy all up over Boston right now, right?
It's my favorite project I've ever done. Well, partially because it got me out. So like it's stickers on the sidewalk. They're on the sidewalk. If you go to Boston right now, you'll see my copy on the sidewalks. And there are also, I didn't post this in the group, but there are digital ads and banners. So like, the ones that are on the corners of buildings, like 2 screens, my copy is on the corner of a building.
That's so cool.
Have you gone out have you driven up there to like see it in person? Oh, you should take a road trip.
You should, yes.
And be like,
I know it's going to be up there all through the holidays. I got to get up before like people walk too much on the stickers and tear.
Yes. You have to stand next to the sticker, be like, no,
cones around it.
Look, cones, yeah.
Like, do you know how much effort went into that sticker?
Are you reading this?
Yes,
Look, someone had to write that.
I can offer interviews. I'll sit there, I'll put up a table and be like, talk to me about my coffee. But yeah, I'm so excited about it. It is definitely the most exciting thing I've worked on. And this is a client where like I do it's through the agency, right? So I do a lot of social for them. And this was like a one-off, like they're doing this thing. And I was like, I want to do it. Like, I want that in my portfolio. I want to do that thing. Like, can I? They're like, yeah, sure. So yeah, I got to do a bunch of stuff. So I did the sidewalk stickers, I did those digital banners, I did a landing page, right? So it all kind of comes together.
It's a full campaign.
Full campaign. And it took like the stickers that are there now are not what I wrote with my first draft. Like those are not my first draft. So I think that that's important for people to know is like my first draft, the client was like, no, this isn't working. And it wasn't even my client that said that. It was like their partner. So like they're working also with like, so it's happening at like the Current in Boston, right? So it's this particular pop-up shop thing. And there's, I don't even really know them that well, but there's like a partner they're working with they're in charge of like the space. And they were like, actually that, I don't think that works. So a few stakeholders. So that was like, there were a couple rounds, but I really love what's up there now. It's like super simple and I think intriguing. Get people to go to a webpage. Yeah.
I love, do you mind sharing more about like that? Cause I think that feeling, a lot of people think, oh, this isn't it at all. And to go back to then the drawing board, but I love hearing you say that it's in like a better place, or you feel like, you know, it came to a better final product. So what did you do to work through that? To be like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board or.
Yeah. Well, and it was really helpful because it was my first time doing something like this. So like the feedback, the people who gave the feedback, right, because they're not my client, they're the ones in charge of the space. They've done these stickers before because my client hasn't done them either, right? Like they're a digital platform. So they were like, you know, here are examples of ones that have worked really well in the past. Because they've had other companies like do these stickers in this space, right? So they were able to show me examples, and my first draft was approaching it probably as my client wanted to, which is like really putting all the info in, right? Like when the sticker, you know, like what they said is it works better if it's like how can I put like a tickle of a thought, you know, it's like you know, like what's gonna make someone go to a website when they see it in the real world? Like they can't actually click a button, right? They can't literally click to go there. Like what will make them type a URL into their phone? So that was really helpful, and it's way better than my first draft. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I think it's helpful for people to hear that because it can be, you can feel that a lot of like, oh, I'm terrible at copywriting, especially the first time it happens that you get feedback and you're like, oh, is this not the career for me? But remembering that it's a collaborative process and that it comes to a better place in the end.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I mean, I still got that feeling. Like I still had that thought of like, I suck, but like, it's not true. I like, it's not true. I don't suck at copywriting. And like, you just kind of have to be like, yeah, it's okay that I thought that, but it's not true. And I'll just try again. I've so many projects, they're so different from my first draft. They end up being so different. Yeah. But
it's a collaboration. There's going to be stuff in your client's head that they're not going to know to tell you in the initial call, or that's not going to occur to them, or like this partner were they even involved in any of the kickoff?
No. Yeah. So
like there's no way. Was in the feedback round. So there's no way that, it's, and I love to hear you say too, that you had that moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. Because I think that everybody who feels that, first of all, everyone feels it, right? Everybody feels it.
I still do it with a new client.
Like when we put something through, you're like, I think that's good. And they come back and they're like, nah, it's really not it. And you're like, oh my God. But it can be just a temporary thought. And if you recognize that it's like, oh yeah, all right, this came up again, let it go. It doesn't have to be something that defines you. It doesn't have to be something that you perseverate on. it's just oh, yep, that's my brain. I knew that was going to happen. As soon as I got feedback that wasn't positive, my brain was going to pop up, and I love that. It's just,
it's so important. It's part of the job so much. So yeah.
It's don't believe everything you think. Just because it pops up in your brain doesn't mean that it's real, doesn't mean that it's valid. Yeah.
And it's not bad that you had the thought.
Yeah.
That's the one that gets me through. It's like, yeah, it's okay. I felt bad for a minute. That's natural. Of course.
It's human. Yeah.
But it's okay. As long as like, I work, because I think my account management experience has helped a lot with that. I mean, it's important as a freelancer to like have that account management experience. Like, I'm not like speaking for a team, I'm speaking for myself now, but it helps, it like separates me from the work a little bit. Like I can be the account manager when I'm talking and take the feedback, and then be the copywriter with my headphones on at the computer going back. So I think that helps. It helps me separate. Yeah.
I'm gonna try that. I like that. I'm this role now, and now I'm this role. I like that.
Yeah. Well, it's it's one thing to say you can't be married to your work. You can't be emotionally invested in it.
Yeah.
And like in theory, you can not be married to your work, not be emotionally invested in it. But I like that. I agree. I think that's a great point from the other side, looking at it from. So what advice would you give, putting on your account manager hat for a second? What advice would you give to copywriters? Maybe that's too broad. It's probably a little too broad, but whatever.
well, I think there are like many steps, right? Like there's like advice for kickoff to put on your account manager hat is like, stick to the brief. Like don't let them skip it. Don't let them skip the brief. I've made that mistake. I don't make that mistake anymore. The brief that you have in the program, that's what I use. And also just, this is a little bit of a tangent, but even the agency, like they don't always know how to get me all the info I need. So like I have to be like, no, get these answers to these questions, or bring me on the call, like, which is fine. They do that sometimes. Or I've asked to talk to their client, in addition to them talk. So they'll come and they'll give me like 2 sentences, like, this is the project. I'm like, oh, but who's the audience? Like, well, I don't know anything. So that a little tangent, but it's good to know that sometimes you feel like when you're behind an agency, they know what to ask for, and you should just trust they'll get you all the info, but they don't always know. And it's fine that they don't. And it's just be like, it's fine. You don't know. I know. Let me help you get the right information. So I guess that's part of what I'd recommend, but also in the feedback part of it from my account manager side, I don't know. When I was an account manager, I felt like part of my role was like taking all of any sort of bad energy and like making sure it didn't get passed on to the creatives, like any sort of anger from the clients if things weren't going well, or like part of my job was absorbing that and not passing it on, which maybe is not healthy, and it wasn't a good way to look at it. But
no,
your
but
creative team probably loved you. Yeah.
Bless you wonderful woman.
I was going to say, you're probably fantastic at what you did. I'm sad it burned you out, but probably because you're so good at it. Yeah.
So it's a little bit harder to do that when you are both of them, sure. But I think you can kind of take something from that of like, you can just, I don't know. I guess it boils down to you don't have to take it personally, which is so hard, but you really don't. Like, when I was an account manager, I would also always tell myself if I had an angry client, I'd be like, well, their boss is probably being mean to them. It has to stop somewhere. I don't need to be mean to my creative team to make them do the work. So,
but that is valid, right? The as a copywriter, if you have, and I don't think it happens all that often that you literally get on a call with an angry client. I think that happens a little bit more. Unfortunately, I think account managers get that a little bit more than creatives do. But it's, you don't have to pass that along to your creative team. Even when you're one person, you can hear it and go, yep, I heard that. Someone's messing around with them. I don't need to repeat that to myself. Whatever anger that is coming in, or whatever frustration or whatever's going on in their life, I don't have to take that in and then say those words back to myself, or let them ring in my head all day long. I can go, all right, there's something going on with them. Let me just focus on what I do best, focus on putting out great copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've heard you say this before, is that like, it's part of it, right? Like you budget for revisions, and part of that's because like, and also I want to clarify that I've rarely had an angry client.
Agreed. Yes.
It is as a freelance copywriter, I don't think I've had any. It's only when I was an account manager and they knew that I wasn't the person actually being creative, right? Like they knew that. So
which is so gross. Yeah, it's like, ooh,
right?
But
so
yeah,
weird.
like, oh.
Yeah. But you sometimes like you write the first draft and they're like, oh, I didn't know I didn't want that, but now I know I don't want that. And it's like, oh, okay, fine, great. I'm glad we figured that out. Like that's why I budgeted for revisions, and it's not a big deal. It's part of the whole thing. Exactly. So I think that's helpful too, just recognizing that there is going to be at least one round of revisions, and there's nobody has done anything wrong.
Yes, exactly. It's just it's about polishing. You put out something great. Yeah. Now the clients are going to put your hands on it, you're just polishing it to make it even better. Yeah. Love it. Nicole, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So first of all, if anybody is listening, they're like, oh, I love the way she operates. I would love her to write copy for me. How can people find you?
I have a portfolio website. It's nicolecopy.com. I'm going to try to update it before this airs because it's a little behind, but yes.
Good time.
nicolecopy.com.
nicolecopy.com. Love it.
Yes.
And then just, if someone is listening to this and they just found the podcast and they're just kind of considering getting into copywriting, what piece of advice would you give them, or what would you ask them to consider?
God, I think so. At the beginning, it can feel so overwhelming. Like there's so many things you need to do. And I think it's just do one thing at a time is my advice. Like one thing at a time. It actually won't take as long as you think it will. I know a lot of CCA students start landing clients relatively quickly, right? Like just a couple months. And I think it happens. It happened to me. I know it's happened to other people I see in the group. I'm always surprised. I'm always like, wow, they just started like last month. That's amazing. So yeah, I think just one step at a time. You know, there's this quote by E.L. Doctorow. I don't know if you heard, but it's you can if you're driving at night, right? You're driving at night, you can only see as far as your headlights, but you can get the whole way that way.
I love that.
I love that quote. I think that's good advice for getting started in copywriting.
I love that. That's fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, Nicole, thank you. This has been fantastic. I really love this idea of having a separate copywriting hat and a separate account manager hat, because we have to perform that role. Even we don't have a background, and we're still performing that role, especially as a freelancer. And I love the idea of separating those two. And I would really encourage all of our viewers or listeners to try those hats on and see how they go. And of course, let us know, connect with us, let us know, and let us know if it's made a difference for you. And of course, we will catch you all in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching. Make sure you don't miss any tips, tools, or tactics for copywriters by clicking subscribe right now. And of course, you can always find us over at filthyricwriter.com. We'll see you next time.